Om Stapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmasvarupine avatara varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme tayo sritva pranamami muhurmuhu Namasvi Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukasvarupaya Swamine Tapahari. The story of the first 4 years of sadhana. If you want to study the period of Sri Ramakrishna's sadhana, you must first remember what he told us about it himself. That's why, revered Sarat Maharaj relied on 3 types of, pramanas or proofs. One is what he heard from Sri Ramakrishna or Thakur himself, then what he heard from the contemporaries of Sri Ramakrishna, those who had lived with him, who have seen him at some point of the time in life. Or the third is from the hearsay, those who have heard either themselves or from others about Sri Ramakrishna and have passed on the information to Sarat Maharaj. इस तरीका 3 तरीका प्रमाण से उन्होंने एक किताब लिखे. Then it will not be difficult to determine the chronology of events. We already mentioned that the master told us that for 12 years he was absorbed continuously in the sadhana of various faiths. According to the gift deed of Rani Rasmani's temple endowment, the Dakshineshwar Kali temple was consecrated on Thursday, 31st May 1855. A few months after that, the master assumed the office of priest, so it is certain that his sadhana was performed from 1856 to 67, those 12 years. So, although these were his main periods of sadhana, he practiced some spiritual disciplines even afterwards when he visited holy places and when he returned to Dakshineshwar. Not only that, एक अर्थ में सारा जीवन, whole life, was one of continuous sadhana in one form or other. So every now and then he would dive deep into samadhi, even when he was in the most normal state of consciousness. So Sarat Maharaj has really divided them into 3 periods of 4 years each. The main events that occurred during the period first 4 years were 1856 to 59. Then it was from 16 to 63. In that, during last 2 years, master practiced disciplines under the guidance of Bhairavi Brahmani from Gokul Vrata to 64 main tantric disciplines that are prevalent in Bengal. In the third 4-year period was for 64 to 67, when he was initiated to Ram Mantra by Jatadhari, etc., etc. And he also wore women's clothes for 6 months continuously, not attain perfection in Madhura Bhava in accordance with Vaishnava Tantra. He also received monastic vows from Totapuri and attained Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Finally, he received instruction in Islam from Govinda, a Sufi practitioner. So the idea is, whatever he did with such intensity that in no time he could attain perfection or the highest pinnacle of each type of sadhana. The master became acquainted with the Sakhya Bhava, friendly attitude according to the Vaishnava Tantra, and the resemblance of Kartabhaja, Navarasik, and other subsidiary Vaishnava sects. The master was quite familiar with various denominations of Vaishnavism, as is clear from the fact that Vaishnavacharan Goswami and other aspirants of those sects came to him for spiritual guidance. When we divide the period of master's sadhana into 3 parts, we see precisely that each period is distinguished by a particular form of spiritual discipline that he practiced. ये 12 के अंदर 4 उन्होंने विभक्त किया. हर 4 के अंदर एक पर्टिकुलर भाव आपकी प्राधान्यता देख पाएंगे. Not only that, as I told earlier, of course, Ramakrishna did practice all that, but in every case, the chief protagonist, the main person who came to teach Sri Ramakrishna, he himself left back fully enriched. जिन जिनका जीवन में जो कमतियां थी सब पूर्ण करके अपने अपनी जगह पे सब वापस चले गए. That was what it was. We have seen that the only external help he had in the beginning of his sadhana was the initiation he received from Kenaram Bhattacharya. क्योंकि माँ की पूजा करने के लिए बिना दीक्षा करना ठीक नहीं वो सोचे थे, उसके अनुसार उन्होंने किसी तरह पता चला दिस केनाराम भट्टाचार्य जी वॉज ए वेरी सात्विक पर्सन, सो उनसे उन्होंने ऐसी दीक्षा ले लिए थे. उन्होंने he had taken initiation from him and that was the only help. His innermost longing for God realization was his mainstay during this period. Soon that longing grew more intense and greatly affected his body and mind. This longing brought immense love for his chosen deity, and gradually it led him along the path of Raga Bhakti, transcending the regulations of Vaidhi Bhakti. That longing allowed him to finally have the direct vision of the Divine Mother and endowed him with yogic powers. So, this is where we kind of left off last time. So the main support, the main pillar on which his sadhana rested, or the main foundation, was Vyakulata, or intense longing for God. This was the main thing that really, helped him progress in his spiritual life. That's why, as we have discussed quite a number of times, this particular aspect of sadhana is something, you can virtually say that Sri Ramakrishna's unique contribution. Because, in Bhakti Shastras, definitely in the classical texts, in many places, you will see this love for God, etc., etc. But this tremendous longing, Vyakulata, and that alone is sufficient for realizing the highest goal of life. This was clearly proved by Sri Ramakrishna, and he added this dimension to the lore of sadhana according to Hindu tradition. Because it was not so much of japa, meditation, all those things were there definitely, particularly meditation. You used to meditate for hours. But still, the greatest, you can say the greatest support for his sadhana was this intense longing for Ishta, for his chosen deity. That feeling that still he has not realized the goal of life, still he has not had the vision of his Ishta Devata, that tremendous pain, unbearable pain which he used to suffer, that was the real support. The reader may ask, at that time, the master had already realized God and became perfect in yoga. What else was left? Why did he continue to practice sadhana? Because now after the end of the first 4 years, so he has had that great vision of Divine Mother, and Maharaj himself writes he was endowed with yogic powers. Then what was the need for him to practice sadhana further? He had realized what was necessary. Maharaj says our answer is that this is true in one sense, but it was still necessary for him to continue his sadhana. एक दिशा में एक अर्थ में तो ठीक है, लेकिन फिर भी उनका साधन करते रहने का जरूरत था. क्यों? The masters say, according to the general law of nature, trees and creepers first bloom and then bear fruit, but there are some that grow fruit first and then flowers. The spiritual evolution of the master's mind was exceptional in that way. So, in one sense, we admit that the reader's question is reasonable. But although in the beginning of sadhana, Master had wonderful visions of the Divine Mother, he was not firmly convinced of their authenticity, nor was he certain that he had reached the ultimate goal. He needed to compare his experiences with those of illumined souls as they are recorded in the scriptures. So, ठाकुर ही कहते थे ऐसे होता है, कोई कोई साधारण तो पहले फूल, फूल की बाद ही फल, लेकिन ऐसा ऐसा कभी कभी ऐसे भी हो जाता है, पहले फल बाद में फूल. सो इन हिज केस ऑल्सो परहैप्स शर्मा इज हिंटिंग, पहले उनका तो बहुत जल्द से जल्द दर्शन तो हो गया, लेकिन जो पहले उसका पहले जो प्रक्रिया जो होना था, फूल होना, खिलना, that had not happened. So perhaps for that fulfillment again he went back and did more sadhana so that he comes along the more traditional known path, namely पहला फूल उसके बाद फल, वही रास्ता भी आ पाएंगे. नॉट इन दैट महाराज लिख रहे हैं दर्शन तो हुआ, फिर भी उनका मन ही मन इतने संपूर्ण रूप से ऐसे कोई स्पष्ट नहीं था, मैं सब मेरा सब मिल चुका है, और कुछ करने की जरूरत नहीं है. ये सब उनका थोड़ा मन में कुछ संदेह था. वो चाहते थे, उनका जो अनुभव हुआ वो बड़े बड़े साधकों का जीवन में जैसे हुआ उसके साथ कहाँ मिल है, क्या हो रहा है, इसलिए उन्हें उनके साथ कंपेयर करने के लिए जो शास्त्र में लिखा गया, इसके लिए उन्होंने और फिर और गहराई से जाके उनका साधन करना पड़ा. द एक्सपीरियंसेस he needed to compare his experiences with those of illumined souls as they are recorded in the scriptures. The experiences that he had achieved by means of his inmost longing needed to be verified by following the paths and methods prescribed in the scriptures. जो शास्त्र में जो लिखा गया उसके अनुसार, इसलिए बाद में भैरव ब्राह्मणी आए, तंत्र मत के अनुसार 64 तंत्र में जो लिखा गया उसके अनुसार पूरी तरह उन्होंने सब कुछ किया. ऑल दैट इज गिवन अकॉर्डिंग टू 64 तंत्रास. सिमिलरली वैष्णव शास्त्र में जितना जो लिखा था उसके अनुसार भी, ताकि जो साधारण बाकी जब अन्य अन्य साधकों का जीवन में जैसे था, सो ही ऑल्सो वॉन्टेड टू फॉलो ऑल दैट एंड मेक सर्टन दैट इज रियलाइजेशन फॉर ट्रू. The experiences that they are achieved by the means of inmost longing needed to be verified by following the paths and methods prescribed in the scriptures. उन्होंने तो अलग रास्ता निकाला था जो व्याकुलता से ही ऊपर तक पहुंचना, लेकिन बाकी सब जिनके जैसे से क्रिया करते थे, जो वर्शिप करते थे, बाकी ऑल दैट मेथड्स अकॉर्डिंग टू विच जो ऊपर जाना, वो भी क्या संभव कि नहीं, वो देखना चाहता था. The scriptures say that a spiritual aspirant cannot be completely certain about his own visions and mystical experiences until they have been compared with the truth taught by the Guru and with the experience of the past seers of truth that are recorded in the scriptures. क्योंकि मैं भी कह सकता है मेरा सब हो गया, प्रमाण क्या है? आप ऐसे कोई सदगुरु, उन्होंने जो आपकी शिक्षा दिया, उनकी जो वाणी संदेश के अनुसार होना चाहिए. और दूसरा है बड़े बड़े साधकों का जीवन में जैसे हुआ था उसकी उल्लेख हम लोग शास्त्रों में हम लोग का मिल रहा है, उसके साथ क्या सामंजस्य है, क्या मिल रहा है क्या, then only one can be true, certain. When the aspirant finds these three, the words of the Guru, the testimony of the scriptures, and his own experience identical, she becomes free from doubt and attains peace. शास्त्र में जो कहा है गुरु वाक्य है और अपना अनुभूति, ये तीनों जब मिल जाता है, एक ही तरह हो रहा है, then one can be certain. To illustrate this point, we can refer to the story of Shukadeva, the son of Vyasa. Shuka was free from Maya. From his very birth, he had divine visions and other extraordinary experiences. ये शुकदेव के सब कहते थे आजीवन ब्रह्मज्ञानी, जन्म से ही ब्रह्मज्ञान था उनका, अलग से उनका साधन करके मिलने की जरूरत नहीं था. He was, from birth, he was a brahmagyani, so to say. One day, after his father had taught him the Vedas and scriptures, Shuka said to Vyasa, from my birth, I have been experiencing the scripture states recorded in the scriptures, but I am still not certain that I have experienced the highest truth. Please tell me what you know about them. Vyasa thought to himself, I have been continually teaching Shuka about the goal of spiritual life and the ultimate truth, but still his mind is not free from doubt. Perhaps he thinks that if he becomes illumined, he will renounce the world, and for that reason I have not taught him anything, because my attachment for him or for some other reason would therefore be beneficial for him to hear about this from another sage. Reflecting this, Vyasa then told Shuka, I am unable to remove your doubts. We are aware that Janaka, the king of Mithila, is truly a man of knowledge. Go to him and have all your questions answered. So उन्होंने बोला पिताजी को, मैं तो शास्त्र में जो कहा गया सबके अनुसार मैं तो हमेशा ये बचपन से अनुभव कर रहा हूँ, फिर भी मेरा मन से संदेह नहीं जा रहा है, आप मेरा समझाइए। सुखदेव ने सोचा, मैं तो बहुत दिन से उसकी पढ़ा रहा हूँ, जन्म से ही पढ़ा रहा हूँ, लेकिन फिर भी उसका संदेह से निरस्त नहीं हो रहा है। वो सोच रहा है पिताजी मेरा को संपूर्ण रूप से नहीं दे रहे हैं, क्यों? मैं सब पता कर लो, मेरा ब्रह्म ज्ञान मिल ही जाए, मैं तो घर छोड़ के चले जाऊं, इसी कारण से वो मेरा पूरा नहीं दे रहा है। ऐसी संदेह सुखदेव का मन में हो रहा है, इसलिए मैं दूसरी जगह पे भेजूंगा। इसलिए वो सुखदेव की बोला, मैं तो तुमको संदेह से वही मैं संपूर्ण रूप से इसका मैं आंसर नहीं कर पा रहा हूँ, संदेह दूर नहीं कर पा रहा हूँ। तुम बहुत एक बड़े सज्जन महापुरुष है जनक राजा, उनके पास जाओ, मिथिला की जो राजा है वहाँ उनके पास जाके उन्हें सब कुछ प्रश्न आप वहाँ जवाब वहाँ तुमको मिल ही जाएगा। Sukadeva immediately went to Mithila, where he learned from Janaka about the experience of the knowers of Brahman. Shuka attained peace after realizing that instruction of the Guru and the words of scriptures were identical with his own experience. खुद तो अनुभव था, शास्त्र पढ़ लिया था, अभी गुरु से भी वही मिला उनका, ये तीनों एक होते ही उनका मन से संदेह सब दूर हो गया, वो पूर्ण ज्ञानी हो गए। There are many other reasons for the masters practicing sadhana after already attained the goal. She'll refer to here some of them. और भी कुछ महाराज कारण बता रहे हैं. The aim of master sadhana was not to attain peace for himself. The divine mother had made him assume a body for the good of the world. ठाकुर तो जो किया सब तो अपना के लिए कुछ नहीं किया, उनका क्या जरूरत था? लोक हित के लिए, लोक संग्रह के लिए, लोक कल्याण के लिए किया था। इसलिए तो माँ उनको ऐसी योग मनुष्य शरीर धारण करके धरती पे रहने के लिए भेजे थे। इसीलिए बहुत सारे उन्होंने आध्यात्मिक से पत्तों के अनुसार अब उन्होंने साधन किया एंड सबका सत्यता उन्होंने प्रमाण किया। He evaluated the validity of each. It can be said that he had to acquaint himself with the ultimate goal of these religious practices so that he could teach the entire spiritual world. सब में उनका अंत तक पहुंचना था, क्योंकि उस साधन मार्ग में दूसरे की वो रास्ता दिखा सकते। ठाकुर तो एक समन्वय आचार्य थे, सिर्फ एक पद नहीं, एक पंथा नहीं है, सबको माध्यम में जिस पद पे भी जो चलना चाहते हैं उसको मार्गदर्शन करने की जरूरत था। उसके अनुसार उन्होंने विभिन्न जगह ऐसे बुलाए, मार्ग में साधन किए, सबको रास्ता दिखाने के लिए। Because he was unlettered, his life proved that it was possible to reach the goal of each path through practice alone. ऐसे नहीं मैं कुछ किताब पढ़ लिया, किताब से मैं बोल रहा हूँ, ऐसे संभव ही नहीं है, क्योंकि बिल्कुल तो वो अनपढ़ आदमी थे, कोई एक भी ऐसे कोई किताब नहीं पढ़े थे। इसलिए उन्होंने प्रमाण किया सिर्फ अभ्यास के माध्यम में, साधन के माध्यम में। आपका पहले आप कुछ नहीं जानते हैं, ऐसा हो सकता है, एक भी किताब नहीं पढ़ा, फिर भी आप सब कुछ अनुभूतियां आपका जीवन में संभव है। And thus through the master, because he was unlettered, and thus through the master, she, meaning the mother, re-established the truths of the Vedas, the Bible, the Puranas, the Quran, and other scriptures in the present age. सब धर्म की जो मूल ग्रंथ, सबको अनुसार जो होना था सब उन्होंने करके दिखाए। For that reason, his sadhana continued even after he attained peace. The Divine Mother brought illumined teachers and scholars of each religious path to Dakshineshwar, so that the master could learn the spiritual practices recorded in the scriptures and verify his own experience. This point shall become clearer as we continue to study his wonderful life. So ऐसे वो साधक को वो ले आते थे, जो उनसे वो पता करता था ठाकुर, और उसके बाद वो तो वो सब शास्त्र के अनुसार साधना करते थे। उन सबको जीवन में जो हुआ था ठाकुर भी सब अनुभव करके आप सबको बता देते, हाँ ये सब ठीक है, इस पद पे भी जाना संभव है। We have already explained that during the first 4 years of the master's sadhana, intense longing for God relation was main support. At that time, no capable teacher came to guide him in his spiritual journey along the path enjoined by the scriptures. So he needed to rely on his own intense longing, the common factor of all sadhanas. The master attained the vision of the Divine Mother by virtue of his longing alone, proving that in the same way an aspirant can realize God without any external help. बाहर से कोई सहायता नहीं है, फिर भी उन्होंने सिर्फ व्याकुलता के आधार पर अपना खुद का सहायता के आधार पर अंत तक वो पहुंच पाए. But if you want to attain perfection through longing alone, must keep in mind how intense our desire must be. ऐसे आप व्याकुलता के माध्यम में आप मिलना पाना चाहते हैं तो आपका कितनी गहराई से साधना करना पड़ेगा, कितना इंटेंस होना चाहिए. This becomes clear to us when we study the master's life during that period. We have observed that his intense longing pushed aside eating and sleeping, as well as feelings of shame and fear, and other physical and mental habits and impressions. He was totally indifferent to his own life, much less to maintaining his physical health. उन्होंने तो एकदम ऐसी उन इंटेंस साधना किए थे, उनका लज्जा घृणा सब दूर हो गया था, कोई किसी को डर नहीं था, बिल्कुल खाना पीना रहना सोना सब दूर कर देते थे और अपना जीवन के प्रति तो बिल्कुल कोई नजर नहीं था, शरीर अच्छा रखने के बाद तो दूरी बात है. The master used to say, because at that time I paid no attention whatsoever to taking care of my body. My hair grew long and became matted with dirt. During meditation, my body would become stiff and motionless as a log because of my intense concentration. Thinking it to be an inert object, birds would perch freely on my head and peck at the dust of my matted hair, seeking particles of green. ऐसे होता था, बाल इतना लंबा होके जटा बन जाता था और ऐसे ही बैठते थे एक काष्ठ की तरह, और उसमें उनका सिर पर पक्षियां बैठते थे और दे यूज्ड टू पिक सीइंग वहाँ कोई दान का कुछ मिल रहा है क्या ऐसा. Again, sometimes the pain of my separation from God would make me rub my face desperately on the ground until it was cut and bleeding in some places. ऐसे अपना इष्ट देवता के सदे दर्शन नहीं हो रहा है, उससे दूर रहना पड़ता है, ये सोच सोच के जमीन पर अपना मुंह घीसते थे. It used to bleed even. I was completely oblivious to how the entire day would slip away in meditation, devotional practices, prayer and self-surrender. दिन भर कैसे चला जाता था पता नहीं होता था. At the advent of evening, when the temple garden reverberated with the sound of conch shells and bells, I would be reminded, another day is gone in vain. Still I have not seen the mother. दिन भर साधन करते थे, सुबह से शाम तक ध्यान जप मेडिटेशन गाना गाना सब कुछ सरेंडर. शाम का सब घंटी बजता था आरती वगैरह का और शंख बजाते थे, उनका याद आता था, फिर एक दिन चले गए बेकार, कोई फायदा नहीं है, अभी तक माँ का दर्शन नहीं हुआ. Then in such a frenzy of despair would seize my soul, I could bear no more. सहन नहीं कर पाते थे. I'd throw myself down and shout, Mother, still you have not revealed to me. I would cry bitterly, tormented with pain. People would say he is suffering from colic. That's why he's crying so terribly. उनका पेट में ऐसे दर्द है, इसलिए इतना वो चिल्ला रहे हैं, रो रहे हैं. When we visited the master, he would sometimes refer to his condition during years of sadhana to make us understand the intensity of the longing that is needed for God realization. कभी कभी ना इन लोग का ठाकुर बता देते थे कितना गहराई से साधन करना पड़ेगा. आपका भगवान लाभ आप करना चाहते हैं, भगवान के दर्शन करना चाहते हैं, आपका कितनी दूर तक जाना है. बता देते हैं, people shed a jug full of tears at the death of a wife and children or the loss of property. But tell me who weeps for God? पति पत्नी के लिए, बच्चों के लिए, संपत्ति के लिए, इस पे कितना रोते हैं। भगवान के लिए कौन रोने के लिए तैयार है? Let them cry for God with that kind of intense longing, then let me see how he can withhold himself from them. भगवान कैसे दूर रहेंगे? ऐसे आप व्याकुलता से आप रोते रहो, रोते रोते प्रार्थना करो, भगवान बिल्कुल आ जाएंगे, आपका बहुत नजदीक आ जाएंगे, दर्शन दे देंगे. The master's words penetrate deep into our hearts. It seemed to us that he had truly experienced this in his own life, could therefore speak with such conviction. सब समझ पाते थे, कैसे ऐसे से बोल पा रहे हैं, का जीवन में इतना दृढ़ता जो बोल रहे हैं, क्योंकि अपना जीवन के आधार पर बोलते थे, से उनका मन में कोई संदेह नहीं था, और जरूर उनका वो अपना अनुभूतियां के आधार पर बोलते थे, सबको सुन के ही विश्वास जन्म लेता था मन में. सी दैट इज द पावर ऑफ अ रियलाइज्ड गुरु, जो खुद अनुभूतियां के आधार पर शिक्षा शिष्य बनाते थे. Those who take disciples based on their own experience, उनका तो अलग ही बात है. Can you imagine how each one of them could become a Brahmagyani? Raja Maharaj, Hari Maharaj, Sharat Maharaj, Swamiji, Babara Maharaj. How? Because literally ठाकुर had realized, he transmitted to them. खुद भी अनुभव किया, सबको दिया. ऐसे उत्साह देते थे, उद्बुद्ध करते थे, ऊर्जा देते थे, हाथ पकड़ पकड़ के सिखा देते. Naturally, obviously they all became great sadhakas. They all realized great heights of spiritual illumination because they lived in the company of such an extraordinary guru. Of course, ये भी बात हो सकता है, हम लोग भी ऐसे मिलने में करेंगे, नहीं करेंगे, मिलता भी नहीं है. क्यों? आप ऐसे आधार नहीं है. जैसे आधार हम लोग बनेंगे, गुरु भी वैसे आ जाएंगे. You see, the point is, it's not easy. It's not easy to contain spiritual experiences. Very, very difficult. Ordinary bodies cannot withstand. They will be shattered to pieces. All that sadhana, all that trouble, all that neglect of the body completely had taken away the very idea of body from his body. ये शरीर से शरीर सोच भी हटा दिया था. इसकी वजह से शरीर टूटने की बात ही नहीं हुआ था. शरीर ही नहीं है, शरीर पर बिल्कुल कोई ध्यान नहीं है, नजर नहीं है, सोच नहीं है, विचार नहीं है. शरीर संपूर्ण रूप से उन्होंने अलग कर दिया, दूर कर दिया था. इसलिए जो भी अनुभूतियां हुई, otherwise he could not have sustained. If you have even some amount of body consciousness and yet you get something, the body will be broken to pieces, so to say, shattered हो जाएगा. इसलिए किसी किसी व्यक्तियों का दर्शन होते ही देहांत हो जाते थे. I have told in some other class previously, because there are many new listeners, I am saying, it seems there was a very wonderful lady called Sudhiradi. She was a great assistant to Sister Nivedita. Probably later on she took over. You know how much days he spent with his sister, but later on she was in charge of the school, Nivedita school. She was a great devotee, a great sadhaka. एक बार वो कुछ साथियों के साथ बनारस जा रहे थे. So before reaching Banaras, sometime before, the compartment door, somehow it was opened. खुद ही खोला, कोई ऐसे छोड़ दिए थे किसी कारण से, and she fell down from the train, and obviously the train went for some more distance and then it came back. Those days were all possible. If you pull the chain and explain and all that, and they would oblige. They came back and they found that she was lying dead. So somebody asked Raja Maharaj, why is it, Maharaj? How she died so suddenly? It seems Raja Maharaj became grave. He said it seems she had suddenly had Ishtadarshan. She could not contain, and that's why she passed away. So, it's all इतना सहज नहीं है. कोई हम लोग दे भी दें It's not so, you cannot say that why we are not getting such gurus. हम लोग को ऐसे मिलने में कर. No, because they were all, Thakur used to say, when the flower really blossoms, the honeys would come. And also, because they were all such fit aspirants, because they all come as companions of the Lord. भगवान के साथी आए थे साथी रूपे. इसलिए हर एक का ऐसा जीवन दिखाने के लिए, जगत के सामने प्रकट करने के लिए ऐसे भी साधक हो सकते हैं. एंड ऐसे भी गुरु मिलने में साधक कहाँ तक पहुंच पाएंगे. All that had to be demonstrated. It's all a wonderfully orchestrated game. Dikhana. So everybody was, each one occupied a particular place, particular slot. ठाकुर सबको ऐसे दिया, सब ऐसे ऐसे स्थिति में पहुंच गए. During the first 4 years of his sadhana, the master was not satisfied with merely having visions of the Divine Mother. After experiencing the mother in Bhavamukha, exalted state and absolute to the relative, his mind became attracted to his family deity Raghuveer. So माँ के दर्शन के बाद उनका उनका जो कुल देवता रघुवीर उपासना करते थे, उनके प्रति उनका नजर गया. He knew that if one has the one-pointed attention that Hanuman had, it's possible to have the vision of Rama. रामचंद्र की दर्शन उनका पाने का बहुत इच्छा किया. Therefore, he set out to immerse himself in the attitude of Hanuman, that of a servant in every respect, and began his sadhana to attain perfection in the dasya bhava. Hanuman to dasya bhava sadhana karte deha buddhya daso. During this period, he constantly focused his mind on Hanuman and was so absorbed in that ideal that he completely forgot his separate existence and individuality. खुद का संपूर्ण रूप से वो बिल्कुल भूल गए थे. I had to eat and walk like Hanuman and perform every action as you would have done it. हनुमान जी की तरह उनका सब आभार. I didn't do that of my own accord. It happened of itself. अपना अपनी होने लगा. तो वही भाव मन में इतनी जोर से वो आरोप हुआ था. It was really, foisted on his mind so strongly. बाकी सब अपना आप दूर हो गया था और हनुमान की तरह ऐसी धोती पहनते थे. Tied my dhoti around my waist to make it like a tail, and I moved about by jumping. I ate nothing but fruits and nuts. I didn't like them when they were skinned or peeled. जब बंदर हनुमान जी तो पूरा फल खाते थे ना, ऐसे उनका जो स्किन्स सब रिमूव करके ऐसे तो नहीं खाते थे. हाँ, सो पूरा फल ही खाते थे. सो इसलिए कोई ऐसे काट के देने में उनका अच्छा नहीं लगता था. I spent a lot of time in trees and I kept crying out Rama in a deep voice. My eyes took on a restless look like the eyes of a monkey. And the most marvelous thing was that the lower end of my spine, the coccyx, lengthened nearly an inch. Upon hearing this, we inquired, Sir, do you still have the same growth that was played? No. When I later withdrew my mind from that kind of devotion, it gradually went back to its normal size. See, how do you explain all that? So we may say, oh, it's all imagination, perhaps he imagined or whatever it is. See, the point is, when as long as we are in the state of, completely that we are the body, that idea, it's not possible to understand all that. If you have to understand Sri Ramakrishna, you must go to the state where he was. Then only it is possible, not otherwise, isn't it? If you are like that, then, then obviously you will, then only, only once if you can get that state, then only it's possible to, uh, bring about that kind of this thing in one's life. One has to do intense sadhana. And then he was completely immersed in the Hanumat Bhava. Like Hanuman, like a monkey used to spend time on the trees and go here and there and eat fruits and nuts and so on. Such intensity. So much so even, something like a small tail at the end of his spine, there was a growth was observed. It was during this period that the master had an unprecedented vision. This spiritual experience was so different from his previous ones that it became deeply imprinted in his mind and forever remained vivid in his memory. बाकी पहले जो होता था उससे संपूर्ण रूप में अलग था. क्या अलग था? He described it. One day at that time, I was seated under the Panchavati. I was in a state of ordinary consciousness, well aware of my surroundings. All of a sudden, a luminous female figure of exquisite grace appeared before me. Her radiance lit up everything around her. I could see her, and at the same time, I could see the trees and plants of the Panchavati, the Ganges, everything. I saw that she was human. She had no marks of a divine being upon her, such as a third eye, but the sublime qualities reflected in her face, love, sorrow, compassion, and fortitude, are seldom to be seen among our goddesses. Slowly she advanced towards me from the direction of the north, all the while looking at me with gracious eyes. I was amazed. I was wondering who she might be when suddenly a monkey uttered a cry, fell at her feet, and rolled on the ground. Then it came to me in a flash that this must be Sita, the daughter of King Janaka, who had suffered so greatly all her life and whose whole life had been devoted to her husband Rama. Overcome by emotion, I cried out, Mother, and was about to fall at her feet when she instantly passed into my body and became merged into it. Overwhelmed with joy and wonder, I fell unconscious on the ground. This was the first vision I ever had with my eyes wide open when I was not meditating. सो ये बहुत एक अद्भुत नया तरीका आध्यात्मिक अनुभूति ठाकुर का मिला. बाकी पहले तो ध्यान करते समय बहुत दर्शन होता था, बहुत कुछ उनका अनुभव हुआ, बट इस बार क्या है, उन्होंने आंख खुला था. साधारण ऐसी कोई स्तर पर वो रहा करते थे. वॉज जस्ट इन हिज ऑर्डिनरी स्टेट ऑफ कॉन्शियसनेस, सो टू से. Was seeing everything around Panchavati, trees, etc. Then he suddenly saw a very luminous, radiant figure. He says it was a human figure. It was not that, it was a divine goddess or anything. There was no signs of a third eye, etc., as if it's a goddess. It was from the north, that divine female form was coming slowly. He didn't know who it was. Suddenly, one monkey, you know, fell at her feet. And then, it uttered a cry, fell at her feet, and rolled on the ground. Then, in a flash, Thakur understood it must have been Sita, the daughter of Janaka, who suffered so greatly all her life. Then, for emotion, he cried out as mother and was about to fall. उनके पैर में लूटना था उस समय, वो खुद ही ठाकुर का अंदर चलेगी. She merged into the body of Sri Ramakrishna. ठाकुर जी लिखते बता रहे थे, पहले बार ऐसा मेरे कोई दर्शन हुआ जहां मैं आंख खोल के साधारण स्तर पे रहते रहते ही ऐसे मोरा अनुभूति मेरा मिला. It seems that it's because my first assumption of Sita in a sorrowful aspect, they have had so much suffering in my life. खुद ही बोल रहे थे, सीता तो दुखिनी, सारा जीवन दुख का अनुभव किया. उनकी पति के साथ जाते बाद में भी इमीडिएटली अग्नि परीक्षा देना पड़ा, उससे वो शरीर छोड़ भी दिए, जमीन पे चले गए हैं फाइनली. बट इट सेज बिकॉज इट वाज द फर्स्ट विजन आई हैड with eyes open, I also had to suffer so much. सीता की तरह, गीता तो उनका शरीर पे जाके वो निपट गए ना. She had completely gone and merged in his body. He says, I also acquired those qualities like Sita, and I also I also suffered all my life. During this period, the master felt the need for a sacred place where he could practice austerities. So he told Hriday that he wanted a new Panchavati to be planted. So, Satma यहाँ भी लिखते हैं, the master also said that Sita had a gift of her sweet smile to him during that vision. माँ सीता उनका यही भेंट दिया था, एक मुस्कुरान. So those who saw the master smile knew how she smiled. Another from another book. पंचवटी एक्चुअली 5 पेड़ वहाँ रहते हैं, इसमें पर साधन के लिए, तपस्या के लिए, ध्यान के लिए अश्वत्थ, बेल, अम्लकी और बैनियन ट्री और अशोका, ये 5 हैं. They must be planted according to a certain arrangement. Ashwatha to the east, the Bilva to the north, Banyan to the west, Amlaki to the south, and Ashoka to the southeast. So कहाँ कहाँ ये करना है, दोनों के बीच में, एक एक के बीच में क्या जगह छाड़ना है. A beautiful altar of 2 square yards in size must be placed in the middle of the circle. बीच में वही सर्कल के अंदर ऐसा कुछ रखना है, सो वहाँ बैठ सकते हैं, साधन कर सकते हैं. कहा कौन पेड़ कौन दिशा में रखना, ये सब शास्त्र में कहा गया, उसके अनुसार करना है. सो ठाकुर भी सोचा ऐसा कोई मेरा चाहिए. पहले भी वहाँ एक पंचवटी था, लेकिन उसमें धीरे धीरे वो पेड़ सब खत्म हो रहे थे. They later told us the small goose pond near the Panchavati had been re-excavated at the time, and the low land near the old Panchavati had been filled up with that mud and leveled. The amlaki tree under which the monks used to meditate was destroyed. वहाँ एक अमलकी पेड़ भी था. वो जब ऐसे पुकुर सब तालाब कुछ नया कुछ ये कर रहे थे, उसका मिट्टी पिट्टी निकाल के पानी सब भर रहे थे, उस समय ये अमलकी ट्री भी खत्म हो गया था. To the west of the present sadhan kuti, the monks had planted the Ashwatha tree himself and asked Vidya to plant the banyan, Ashoka, Vilva, and Amlaki saplings. And the entire place was surrounded with a hedge of tulsi plants and aparajita vines. So, उन्होंने नया पंचवटी 5 पेड़ लेके खुद ही अश्वत्था पेड़ उन्होंने वहाँ लगाया. बाकी सब हृदय के बोला, चारी तरह तुलसी गाछ उन्होंने लगाया और अपराजिता भी उन्होंने वहाँ ले आए. You have mentioned elsewhere how the master set up a fence around that place with the help of Bhartabari, a temple gardener, to protect those saplings from cattle and goats. Under the master's care, the tulsi plants and aparajita vines soon grew so dense and tall that no one could see the master when he sat inside to meditate. मतलब बैठ के रात भर ऐसे ध्यान करते थे, कोई देख भी नहीं पाता था, क्योंकि ऐसे इतना ऊंचा हो गया था ये सब पेड़. When the consecration of the Dakshinari temple had become widely known, itinerant monks on their way to Ganga Sagar, the confluence of the Ganges with the Bay of Bengal, and the holy shrine of Lord Jagannath at Puri, began to halt for a few days at Dakshineshwar and receive the generous hospitality of the devout Rani Rasmani. So अभी तो मंदिर प्रसिद्ध हो गया था. एक तीर्थ क्षेत्र प्रसिद्ध होने के बाद सब तो वहाँ जाने लगेंगे. तो बिकॉज दक्षिणेश्वर had become famous, जो रमता साधु जो पदयात्रा में जाते थे, परिव्राजक रूप में घूमते थे, जो गंगा सागर जाने वाला, गंगा और बे बंगाल समुद्र की जो दोनों मिलना जगह, वहाँ जो दर्शन के लिए जाते थे, और पूरी जगन्नाथ जाने वाले सब वहाँ 2-4 दिन दक्षिणेश्वर में रुकते थे, और जो रानी रासमी तो सबको सेवा करते थे, उनका सेवा ग्रहण करते थे. Master said that many spiritual aspirants and illumined souls thus visited the temple. उसी दिन ना बहुत ऐसे से बहुत साधक आते थे वहाँ. They used to come and they used to visit also. So it became a very famous place of pilgrimage in those days, and they saw Master saw many. During this period, it seems that some of them mastered in pranayama and other disciplines of hatha yoga. प्राणायाम हठ योगा ये सब भी थोड़ा सीखने का उनका मौका मिला था. Master indicate this one day as he narrated the following story regarding हलधारी. हलधारी के संबंध में यही ठाकुर बोलते थे. तो Master himself will practice the discipline. हलधारी हम लोग जानते थे कैसे उन्होंने आया वहाँ ये करते के कासल राम तरकता ठाकुर उसके हलधारी बुलाते थे. He later told us not to practice them. If anyone asks for advice regarding Hatha Yoga, he would reply, those practices are not for this age. This Kali Yuga, people's lives are short lived and their existence depends on food alone. Kali में अन्नगत प्राण, ऐसे खाना पीना बिना नहीं रह सकते हैं. हटे वगैरह में बहुत ही आपका उपवास करना, ये करना, बहुत सारे नियम, कठिन नियम सब होता था, इसलिए बिल्कुल मना करते थे. Where is the time now to make the body strong by practicing Hatha Yoga and then to call on God through Raja Yoga? में क्या है, आप यहाँ से एक नाली से आप कपड़ा घुसाओ और दूसरी से निकालो और पेट ऐसे साफ करो, बहुत सारे सारे ऐसे ऐसे हैं. उसमें तक शरीर बहुत ही तगड़ा बन जाता था और उसके बाद आप घंटों पर घंटों बैठो, ध्यान करो. दोस्त ऐसे सब करने का समय भी नहीं है, संभव भी नहीं है. One wants to practice the techniques of Hatha Yoga, to stay constantly with a perfect guru and follow the strict rules. ऐसे कोई आपके करना चाहते हैं तो आपका ऐसे कोई गुरु के साथ रहना है, उसका निर्देश अनुसार हर समय उसके आपकी गाइडेंस की प्रयत्न होता था, इसलिए ठाकुर बिल्कुल मना करते थे. अगले क्लास में आगे इसका ले चलते हैं. ओम शांति शांति शांति, हरि ओम तत्सत. रामकृष्ण अर्पणमस्तु. मैं सोच रहा हूँ मार्च से क्लास शाम को कर दूंगा. एंड कर दिया. ए